symbols. Let's talk about them for a second. They're very helpful in a reading for me since I see like charades. They're very efficient. They almost become like a shortcut in a reading. And we just feel into why they're showing us that. So if somebody was a golfer, clearly I'll see a full golf swing. So it was really funny this last month when the spirit shows me putting for golf. I ask all of you who are mediums to get in the habit of reporting objectively what you see. Don't interpret it first. So I said to my client, this is really strange. Your husband is, no, it was her dad. It was her dad. Your dad is just putting. Normally, golfers swing the full golf club, but he's not golfing. He's just putting. And she laughed and she said, up until he died, one of our favorite activities together was putt-putt. He was not a golfer. He just liked putt-putt. So I just heard Brenda, my guide right now, taking credit for that one because she knows all my symbols. She briefs the spirits ahead of time, and she must have said, don't go like this or she'll think you were a golfer, but she'll understand putting. I love how our guides help us out in that way. Is it better to see your sitter or not if you're a medium? Isn't that interesting? I asked my guides about that. This is something I said in the email that we would be talking about this evening. Because I did a rare phone reading. Normally these days I'm doing them by Zoom and I can see my sitter. So there are actually pros and cons to both, but I prefer to see them. I love feeling the connection that comes with the visual. It's not needed at all. The energy that we tune into is the same, but at the human level, we have the gift of being able to see each other. Just know that we can make assumptions and often make assumptions based on how somebody looks. So a really great technique, if you're going to be doing readings for others, is to, as you first see the person, go through in your mind, what assumptions am I naturally making? And it's fascinating. And then say, okay, all of that might be true, or all of it might be completely false. I know nothing. And then you set it aside and shift to pure being and let source flow through you, merge with that other person. They're all source, and then just take it away. Enjoy the heart connection, but do not depend on what your sitter looks like to get information. As those of you who have studied with me know, it's very important to be able to feel the presence of the spirit. And for me, that means, yeah, I can get a few little pieces of information from you, but I need to feel your personality. So I always say to them, step in closer. Even though it's not a physical stepping in, it's kind of like they turn up their light and I can feel them more, a more clear merging. So before I could even tune into the personality of this one woman's father in spirit, I just knew it was father, and he yelled at me, peanut, and I could see a peanut in my mind's eye, and I said, your dad is showing me peanut in the shell. And so I asked him silently, why? That's one thing, if you're learning mediumship, don't be satisfied with just one little detail, ask them for more. And I said, now he's yelling, Mr. Peanut, and it has something to do with that character. And this is when my sitter, the client, spoke up and she said, oh my gosh, my sister and I just had a conversation last night about what it would be like to be the person who has the job of driving the Mr. Peanut car across the United States. What does that show us? That shows that dad was already gathered for the reading. That's right, spying on the two daughters, talking in just a normal conversation. And your loved ones do this too. They know your thoughts. They listen in on your conversations. There really are no secrets across the veil. And so this is a prime example of why I don't necessarily ascribe to some mediumship teachings where you restrict your client to only saying yes or no. What I restrict my clients to is don't tell me all kinds of things that they can still tell me. But if we want to celebrate a magical moment in a reading, fill in the details. So for them to explain what Mr. Peanut was all about, that was so validating. Yeah, this is Dad. So for those of you who say, how do I know it's not my imagination? You know it when you celebrate with your sitters because they tell you that's what that's all about. I might not have been able to get those details, but it's very clearly that was Dad. Now I know he's here. I'm going to totally trust that I've got this connection. Now Dad's stepping close so I can feel you and describe your essence. So that's why I love feedback in that manner. And then a real gift for me, that same Dad suddenly flashed an image of himself standing before me in full Air Force officer uniform. And it was so fleeting, but I just knew, well, your dad was an Air Force officer. They said, oh yeah, he was so proud of that. And that was taking visuals to a new level for me because seeing the spirits is a major intention of mine. Still didn't see his face, couldn't have described him, but as fleeting as that was, it shows that we all can always aspire to go to higher levels. So never give up hope on yourself. This is a man who told me when we started the reading that just last week, his grief counselor recommended me by name. I think that's absolutely wonderful. I talked to a neighbor at a party just recently, and she's seeing a grief counselor, and the grief counselor said, I hear they talk to dead people where you live. That would be our neighborhood. Yes, we do talk to dead people here, and that counselor was not into this. It was not part of her counseling, and I can tell you that this man who I'm about to discuss, he just leaped forward so far in his grief journey, in his healing as a result of this connection. So his counselor really gets a lot of credit for being open to this. So I always teach, don't make assumptions who somebody has across the veil. It could be anybody that we're deeply grieving. I remember one man I did a reading for, and it was his mother. He was a man in his 50s, and his grief over his mother was inconsolable until we brought her through. So looking at this man, I couldn't tell who he had across the veil until we started. And as soon as we started, shame on me to not feel right away exactly what was going on, but I knew he had a partner across the veil. And I tuned in, and it was very clearly a spouse. And I said to him, well, this could go either way, but it feels like a wife. And he looked and he laughed. He says, no, it's my husband. And I just had to laugh, even though he was smiling too, even though he was in grief. He had a really good sense of humor. And I said, well, let me tell you why it feels like a wife. And you have to understand, I've told everybody before, I don't see them. So it has to go on clairsentience, the feeling and the claircognizance, knowing for me. I said, your husband is standing here. I see gestures with his hands on his hips, and he's shaking his shoulders, and he's saying, well, honey, I'm right here, and things always had to be in order like this, and I really ran the household. Can you see why that felt like a wife? I'm putting myself on report here as the wife. But after that, everything just flowed so beautifully. And I love some of the evidence that this man across the veil got through. He, of course, showed us how he passed, and it was accurate. But he flashed something in my mind, and I never would have thought it from this client, but I said, he's showing me this little thing that my husband and I used to have in our RV. This little solar-powered plastic tchotchke that you sit there, and it was a hula dancer, and it danced in the sun like this. And we used to joke about it, and we loved it. I know you have one of these. I don't think it's a hula dancer, but I know it's a little plastic thing, and you will recognize it. And he said, it's sitting right next to his ashes. Whoa, there's my first goosebumps of the evening. I hope that gave you guys goosebumps. And then throughout the rest of the reading, I didn't realize it, but afterwards he sent an email to Lynette that 3 or 4 things that were on that shelf with the ashes came through. Roses, flickering candles, mention of Archangel Michael, and his photo, all of those things. But here's what's really funny. Beforehand, my client said to his husband, give me a sign from across the veil. Let's make it a blue cornflower. That was on the shelf. And it's the one thing he did not get through to me. So I don't know if he's trying to show all of us that we shouldn't play that very specific code word password thing. I don't know if it's because I wouldn't know a cornflower if somebody put it in front of me, that I never heard of a cornflower. Most likely the latter, since he was very clearly trying to get through all those other things. But my very favorite part in the whole reading was, I said, your partner must have been very fastidious about cleaning up, because he's showing me little hairs that have come out of a razor from shaving. So these are facial hairs, those little short straight ones, and he's scooping them up, putting them in the hand, like, we got to clean these up. And my client just said, I know what that is. He didn't tell me what it was at the time, but oh, did we celebrate at the end of the reading when he held up a necklace that he's wearing, and he says, I didn't want to have his ashes in this necklace, but I wanted a part of him near my heart always. So I took the hairs out of his razor and put them in my necklace. Oh, there are those goosebumps again. My gosh, to see something that specific, to be able to deliver that message, I know you carry me right there in your necklace. I didn't get the necklace, but I never would have even imagined that. And that's one of those things that's a little frustrating. If we can't imagine that somebody would have hairs in a necklace, it's a little harder for them to get through. But I can see how he could have put it together by showing me a necklace. It didn't matter. It was much more magical for us to celebrate that at the end of the reading. And the beautiful part was, I mentioned, for me, the most important thing is to accurately represent their messages. This husband across the veil came through me in channeling. I feel this way about you. You did this for me. We did this together. This is how I feel about you. And that man across the screen, he was so caught up in it. As I'm speaking on behalf of his husband, he is just saying, yes, my love. Yes, my love. The love between them was so palpable. It was so beautiful. I stayed 20 minutes longer than normal just because I didn't want to leave that beautiful, magical field of reconnection that we were enjoying together. That's the whole point of mediumship. It was amazing. And then as we were wrapping up, I said, he's showing me little note cards. And his husband, my client, reaches down and pulls up a sticky note and a note card with little notes written to him on it. He said, they're all over the house. He would leave me sticky notes with love notes all over the house. So I went down and I talked to Ty and I said, you know, love really is love. It was just amazing, amazing. So I love to share that with all of you. What is it we say all the time? Love never dies. And that was evidence of it. So I had a client who wanted to hear from her father. She told me that right up front. And so I tuned in and I could feel him. Suddenly I felt very short of breath, literally couldn't catch my breath. And some of you who are working as mediums know that those across the veil merge so completely with us that we can often take on their symptoms. I love when that happens. It's only temporary and it's very evidential. And then her father across the veil showed me a big C. I knew he was talking about how he passed. And in my work, that's a symbol for me. And I said, your father's showing me he passed of cancer. And she said, no, COVID. And I thought, how did I get that wrong? And she said, it's another C. And all of a sudden I said, oh my goodness, she's right. But I have a symbol. How are we going to get around that? And as I always teach you, ask your guides for help with this. So my guide, Brenda, who is here with us this evening, I said, what are we going to do about this? And she said to me, you would not have gone to COVID. It's still so new. You haven't had enough spirits come through who passed of COVID that your mind doesn't even go there yet. So we had to get you there another way. Thought that was very clever and also very much truth for me, that if I can't imagine something, it's very hard for those in spirit to get it through. If you're working as a medium or trying to connect across the veil, keep that in mind. And so I said, well, we need a new one for COVID. And I said, how about CO? Or just shout it at me. It would be nice to just know it. But I wanted to show you how we can work with our guides. And I know that this is an interactive connection. It's not just pulling data out of the air, because in this case, the father was showing me some of his old memories, things he liked to do. And I said, I see him drawing back an arm and throwing a pass with a football. I know he played football. And she laughed. She said, yeah, he was a quarterback. So perfect. Just a little piece of evidence from him. That one's a short one, but some important teaching about assumptions. They told me this is a good point to share the crossbar technique. When you're aligned with the soul, that's represented by this vertical axis, which is why when you go into meditation, it's very helpful to picture a shaft of white light anchoring you into the center of the earth, or feel the flow of energy here. When you get off balance, you can visualize a horizontal axis. This is your human role, and you can sense how far out of balance, how far not being centered you are, how far out here. So maybe you're about to step on a rattlesnake and you get really knocked off balance way out here. You can come back into balance by picturing that axis like a bar, and you grab onto it and you turn it slowly until it comes into alignment with the vertical axis. You just turn it to come into alignment, and whoosh. When I do that, I feel this increased flow, like a faucet being open. So try it now, right now. Just imagine a time when you were a little knocked off balance. Maybe even today, somebody said something that got you rattled, right? How far out from the heart? How far off balance were you? I want to see you putting your hands out there. Was it here, or were you way out here? Grab onto that bar. Know that as you bring it into alignment with your true nature, it will just dissipate. So let's turn it now. Just twist it. That was just a story. That was just human drama. Here we go. We're aligned again. And you just keep your awareness in the heart. And now get on with your life. I hope you like that. Another one where a mother from across the veil handed her daughter flowers. And this time, very specifically, daisies. And the daughter got so excited. She said, daisies were our thing. From the time I was a little girl, my mom and I always exchanged daisies. So I find it very interesting that people do have these special flowers that are between them and loved ones, and those in spirit will specifically show those. In that very same reading, the woman's father came through and shouted at me, I was a poster boy. And then he flexed his muscles like this. So I explained and described objectively what Dad was doing. And then, as I always teach, and I'm teaching you now, the reason we describe objectively is so that the client knows what they're trying to do across the veil, because we may not interpret it correctly. And I said, it feels like he was a poster boy for something having to do with fitness. And she said, well, my dad really was a great athlete, and he actually was in a poster, a huge poster that my sister still has at her house with some famous actor about athletics. You just can't deny when these things happen. You might think it's data, that we're picking up something in your client's energy field, that there's something about a poster. But when you have a spirit shouting at you, I was a poster boy, and goofing around showing you his muscles, that's not data, is it? Not at all. Last month on my podcast, I interviewed 3 after-death communication experts. You can find that on my YouTube channel. It's called Q&A with Experts After Death Communication. At minute 30, exactly, someone asked, how do you know that our after-death communications, that's any of you, hearing from your loved ones or sensing your loved ones across the veil, how do we know it's not our imagination? That's one of the most common questions we get, isn't it? How do we know it's not our imagination? So one of the experts jumped on that, and he said, it is your imagination. And we go, what? He said, that's the point. You don't have any other medium in your body that lets you see things that are not physically in front of you, but that doesn't mean it isn't real. See, the root of imagination is imaging. So you must see things in your mind. So the question isn't, how do I know it's not my imagination? It isn't, how do I know it isn't real? What you're really asking is, how do I know I'm not making it up? And what does it mean to make something up? Really, what that means is it's not your own thought pattern within the whole field of information energy that's just going round and round in your mind. And how you know it is you get fresh insights that aren't in your conscious mind. You hear and sense things that wouldn't possibly normally come up in your conscious mind. I'm going like this because we are like whirlpools in one stream of consciousness, and we have the same thoughts and all of our old experiences going round and round in our own particular eddy or whirlpool. When you have someone else giving you information, a loved one in your soul family telling you things, it's fresh, it's new, it comes with a lift, a little feeling of excitement and that knowing that Bev was talking about. I'm looking at Bev and Lynette on my screen. You can't see them, but I can. And I know that both of them connect with their own guides, their own loved ones. And there's just that knowing that we don't question it anymore. Lynette's beloved dog, Boo, passed a while back. She just knows Boo is with her all the time. She doesn't question it. She knows she's not making it up because it has that knowing, the sense of presence. You just know. So look for that lift. Go for the knowing, the feeling of presence. It has a different vibe to it than your normal stuff that just comes up. This one really blew me away. This is the awe. This is where I say, may I never grow tired of this. So at the end, after having a great connection with mom, the daisies and dad and the poster boy and all kinds of other things, in come my clients' guides. I don't see them. I just know these are guides, and my head gets pulled up a little higher when I speak to guides. And they just wanted to congratulate my client for the really nice connection she enjoyed with them. They wanted to validate for her, yes, you're talking to us, and we appreciate you talking to us. I hope y'all are paying attention and taking notes with that. Your guides really like it when you establish a relationship with them, talk to them regularly, even if it's not just to ask questions, just thank you for being part of my life. Thank you for keeping me out of trouble. Thank you for putting thoughts in my head and teaching me. And if your guides aren't doing that, well, start asking them to. This is what they're here for. So at the end of that little compliment that her guides get, they said, tell her we want them to communicate with us directly, not through a pendulum. My client went like this. She looked shocked. She turned to the side. She reached down in front of her. We're on Zoom, and she holds up a pendulum. She said, I just got this yesterday. And just before this session, I used it to talk with my guides. Oh my gosh. What does that tell you? The guides really are here. I got goosebumps again, that they know. Of course, the goosebumps are a sign from spirit. I hope you all get them regularly too, just a validation at the higher level, you're connected, but that they know what you're doing. And what a perfect message for this woman. Yes, you have a great connection with us, and you don't need that pendulum. Wow, talk about current events. Here's an example of the web that we're all part of. We are so interconnected, all of us, and you see it more and more when you come to notice the web. It builds on itself. I mentioned Irene, Helping Parents Heal VP. She and another woman came to my house for lunch last month. I rarely do a little girls' lunch, but we were sitting there having a get together, and she got to chatting about a woman that was in her Shining Light Parents chat recently, and she was saying how tragic it was that she had a baby who passed by drowning, only 1 year old. As she told me that story, and she told me a geographic location where this woman was, I thought to myself, ooh, I wouldn't want to be the medium for that reading, because it's for an evidence-based medium. For me, it's a little challenging to get a whole lot of evidence from somebody who is 1 year old, because the kind of evidence we look for is what kind of work they did, what kind of schooling they had, hobbies, interests, activities, memories. So I like to really validate for the parents, your child is right here, and there's not a whole lot in 1 year of life. I hope you understand that. We can certainly get their messages, but I love the evidence. So I just had that thought. 2 hours later, the lunch was over, I went to do a reading. I played the sign game with Brenda beforehand. Brenda's my guide, and if you've been in these webinars before, you know that every time before I do a reading, I say, hey Brenda, what's Lynette doing? What's a current event with Lynette? And she tells me it. I pick up my phone, I text Lynette, who knows I'm about to do a reading, and says, Brenda says you're doing this. And Lynette will validate it or not. Most of the time validates it. In this case, Brenda told me 2 things. Lynette texted back, yep, did those 2 things recently. Go have a good reading. And I said, wait, she just flashed in one more thing, a teddy bear. Well, Lynette came back and said, oh my gosh, last night I was talking to Brenda's son and daughter-in-law. They're not really married, but she's like a daughter-in-law. And they have a new dog, a puppy. Wait till you see this puppy. I'll show you guys a slide later. It looks just like a teddy bear. I even said to them, the dog looks like a teddy bear. So I said, great, send the photo, but I got to go. It's time for the reading. So I turn the phone upside down so it doesn't bother me, and I start the reading. My client came on the screen, knew nothing about her, had no idea who she lost, but I took one look at her, and I just knew she had a baby across the veil. It's that claircognizance because you're already tuning in. And I looked at her and I said, you have a very young child who passed. I can sense him here. This is a boy, but he feels about 3 years old or younger. She said, yeah, a boy, 3 years old. And all of a sudden, the pieces started to come together. It took me a little while to sense how he passed, but I noticed a symbol I have, but I just couldn't believe it. This young boy passed from drowning. We had just had this conversation. And I'm trying to say this couldn't be the same person. And it wasn't, because my client was in a different country and the age of the children was different. But I will say I struggled a bit to come up with evidence from him. Most important to me is to capture his essence. And he had a very discernible, lovely personality that I was able to bring through. But at one point I said, he's handing you a teddy bear. He's showing me a teddy bear that was important to him. She didn't comment at all. This mom, oh, my heart goes out to her, and all moms out there, of course, but she was very, very hurting, a hurting unit. And at the end, she said, I'm so glad you didn't make assumptions. This is really important for all of you who are mediums and students of mediumship. I'm so glad you didn't make assumptions. Every other medium who's read for me, as soon as they find out he was 3, start talking about his blankets and his bottles, and he didn't have any of those. So right away, my human side kind of prickles, and I thought, uh-oh, and I brought up the teddy bear, but I know what he showed me. And I said to her, well, he showed me a teddy bear, and guys, she reached down by her side and lifted up this teddy bear. That's why he brought up the teddy bear. She's sitting there holding it, and I couldn't tell. But this is why I wanted to show you the picture that Lynette sent me by text, and why Brenda brought up the teddy bear. Notice, remember, all these pieces, the web. I'm going to go back to share the screen. I said to this woman, I'm going to take a screenshot of you. I'm not going to get you in the picture, but I have to take a picture of your teddy bear. Ready? This is Brenda's grand dog. This is the teddy bear dog. This is a real dog, everybody. It's wearing a little sweater, but look at that face. Look at those ears. This cannot possibly be a real dog, but it is. And look at the teddy bear that this young woman held up in her reading. I'll put them side by side. To me, that's so similar. The little nose and those ears. It's not your standard teddy bear. Can you see the web at work here? I hope you're celebrating with me. that was one of those readings that's so hard as a medium, because there was nothing I could say to make her feel better. And it was very clear she wanted to join her son. And several emails went by afterwards about why that would not be a good idea. And you can only pray, and as we send healing energy to her, even though you don't know her, you don't know who she is, all of us can send that to her right now. Just to find strength and courage. Yeah. Here's a good point for so many of you who ask, I sense somebody in spirit. Should I say anything? Well, on that trip to Florida, we went way down south and attended a rally for the kind of RV that we have. And each night, all the people gathered for buffet get-togethers, and we met different people at different tables for 10 people each night. And the very first night, sitting there chatting to people, you know, where are you from? What do you do? All those normal things we say. And at one point, this woman who was there with her husband spoke about him being her second husband. And she said, my first husband passed. And all of a sudden, I just got this feeling that I get when I feel a spirit. Again, rare, but I could tell he was right here. And I tuned in, I turned to her and I just said, oh, he passed 10 years ago, huh? And she said, yep, just like that. Yep. Not, how do you know? Yep. And then I said, now she's only about 40 years old, right? So her husband can't be much older than that. And I said, oh, and he passed of cancer, huh? And she said, yeah. And she just kept on talking, and I found it so funny, because if somebody says that to me, what's the most natural question? How do you know that? And because she'd never asked, she didn't respond at all to either of those. I checked with him. Do I say anything? And he said to me, no, I just wanted to be here. And so I left it. See, we don't have to pass it along. He made that entree. If she had asked, man, we would have opened that right up. I would have said, and he's right here, blah, blah, blah. But we want to respect everybody in these connections. I got the goosebumps again. So that was pretty cool. Just last week, I was the guest speaker for a meeting of the Hawaiian International Association of Near-Death Studies group. I think maybe 2 people in that group of a couple hundred were in Hawaii. Everybody else was all over the world. So this was kind of funny, thanks to the internet. But, oh, I think 3/4 of the way through the presentation, one of my drums on the wall over here pinged by itself. That happened to me maybe 2 weeks ago. I was walking to sit down to meditate, and it went boing. And I went, what was that? And I literally took the drum off the wall, and I tried to recreate that sound. And it's not a sound that drum makes, yet it was clearly coming from the drum. So was the sound really in the room, or was it a manipulation of frequency so that this frequency analyzer, the brain, would hear it coming from the drum? Probably the latter, but it sounded exactly like it was in the room. That's objective clairaudience. It's outside the ears. It was not a thought. So I actually stopped in that presentation and went, my drum just played itself. Who is that? And I had no sense whatsoever of who was trying to get my attention. But the next day, someone emailed Bev and said, oh my gosh, Bev, I was called to watch that presentation with the Hawaiian IANS group last night. And just before, I had asked my dad, Dad, if you're around me in spirit, I want you to mention a drum, because he had been a drummer. Can there be any doubt what happened there? Oh my gosh. So speaking of my guide, Brenda, there we go. Before every reading that I do, Brenda's always with me in my readings. She's my mediumship guide, and I play the sign game. You can play this with anyone across the veil. Say, hey, tell me something going on in somebody else in our life that I can validate, just so I know you're around. And then I'm tuned in. With Brenda, I say, tell me something going on with Lynette, who schedules my readings. So I remember just very recently, I said, Brenda, what's up with Lynette? I'm getting ready to do a reading. She showed me a tent. Now, I know Lynette has camped a few years ago, but not recently. She hasn't talked anything about camping. And for this sign game to be valid, it has to be something within the last 24 to 48 hours. So I quickly text Lynette and I say, Brenda shows me you with a tent. What's up with that? You haven't talked about camping. Turns out Lynette was going by the dumpster at her apartment complex, and there's a brand new Coleman tent next to the dumpster. And she picked it up. She said, am I going to keep it for myself, or am I going to, do something else with it? Well, she decided to keep it, I think, but that's irrelevant. What's relevant is Brenda's a spy. She knew all about it. She knows what's in our thoughts. Your loved ones know what's in your thoughts. They know what you're doing. This is so affirming, isn't it? The most mundane things. So with that connection made with Brenda, as I got ready to do the reading, she gave me what felt like a little warning. She said, remember, just flow. And I thought, why is she telling me this? Something's going to come up in this reading where I have to remember to just go with the flow and not be in a rigid box. Good advice for anybody that's connecting. So it turns out my client wanted messages. She wanted advice for herself. She wanted advice in her life now, not necessarily connecting to loved ones across the veil. But it was interesting because a grandmother of hers came in with very great clarity and did something I've only seen a few times. Grandmother, I don't see the spirits, but I see like charades. It looks like my own hands doing something. And grandmother handed my client's mother, the grandmother's daughter, to my client. It's an interesting symbol spirit uses with me now to show me this is my daughter. She's still in my granddaughter's life. And my client, the granddaughter, validated that. And then the messages flowed about the challenges my client is having with her mother here. The grandmother across the veil knows all about it and had all kinds of advice for how to deal with the mother challenges. I just love that our loved ones are, of course, still aware of our family, want to help us and help us with our challenges. You can call on your own loved ones for family relationship challenges anytime. And don't all of us always have some of them? That's the nature of our interactions. It's why we're here, to learn to handle our relationships with greater peace and skill. When we tune into the souls to do that, it makes all the difference in the world. So again, so much knowing came up in that session. I just knew that her mother was a bit of a narcissist. I knew that she was having to deal with those issues. That's my goal for all of you, to get out of the left brain and just flow with the knowing. Then my client's father came in, very different energy, more loving, and got his personality to a T. But what was really cool was he showed me that my client had two other siblings, two sisters. She said, yeah, there are three of us. And then the father says, I watch all of you and all of your grandchildren. And he did something that was so evidential to me that they are right here. These are real people being very clever how they show us things. Usually they'll show me like 3 grandchildren or 2 siblings. In this case, I said he watches all the grandchildren and he just went bump, 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 bump. And I thought, why did he do that? And I heard, count the noise. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Goosebumps again. He says there are 7 grandchildren. She went, yeah, there are. Among the 3 girls, 7 grandchildren. So if that doesn't display that we're not just pulling data out of the air, I don't know what else does. All of these examples that this is an interaction, engaging real live people. They just are no longer in a body. So keep that in mind when you're connecting with your loved ones. It's not just energy. I know we talked about fields, but you have a field, they have a field around them. That's where all the information is circulating, but they're still real people with personalities, characteristics, and they will engage with you. Okay. It reminds me of, when I say get out of the left brain, I just recently watched the the new movie Top Gun Maverick. I'm a big Top Gun fan from way back, of course, with my Navy background. And in that movie, Tom Cruise, the character Maverick, said to the younger pilot, Rooster, over and over, don't think, just do. That's what we need to do in mediumship. Stop thinking things through. Boom, 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 boom. What is that? I know it. Just say it. 7 grandkids. So very cool. Let's see. Just more evidence along the way. He showed me that one of the sisters, he talked about her personality, said she has a birthday next month. My gosh, she does. Then he showed me the other sister, showed me that one of those grandchildren has a physical handicap that affected his walking. And I said to him, what is it? Cerebral palsy. And she said, yes, he does. So just more validations that the loved ones know everything. So let's see. One key teaching point, I hope I emphasize it over and over to all of you. If you don't understand something that you're sensing when you connect across the veil and you're actually doing a session for someone else, just state what you're seeing without needing to understand it. I was about to say trying. Trying is always counterproductive in mediumship, but get rid of the need for you to understand it. The most important thing is that the sitter, the client, understands it. Okay, I'm going to give a little preview of what's coming next month because it's what just happened here in this house. As I mentioned, I'm visiting these people to use their internet, and their son across the veil has a twin sister here who's really deeply grieving him. She's only 11. She's giggling a lot because she has the lady that talks to ghosts in her house this evening. That's what she told her parents. And I said, well, your brother's right here. And for some reason, he's showing me, he just showed me a bunch of balloons and you guys are going pop, 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 pop. I don't understand why you would be popping balloons. And the 11-year-old looked like this. And her mom said, I know what it is. They're not balloons, they're bubbles. And that's exactly what it is. I got the goosebumps. She said, we have videos of her blowing the bubbles and her brother popping the bubbles. We have videos of it. Oh, goosebumps again. You understand? That's the point. I didn't need to understand why would they be popping beautiful balloons, but you can see why it was so fleeting sometimes when we get information and visuals from across the veil, but go with it anyway. As long as your client or your sitter understands, that's all that matters. Message delivered, beautiful memory, and more validation. That little girl is giggling like crazy. She senses her brother, so that's beautiful. This is just validation of that. I mentioned in the email that this ranks right up there with the book that moved. In Wolf's message, I was standing in a bookstore, and very clearly there was a book I was supposed to read. It ended up having in it major clue to something that came up in Wolf's reading, solved a mystery. But that book, I saw it move on the shelf. That's called Physical Mediumship, when something moves. Was it an illusion? It could have been. But what was happening was spirit was manipulating the information coming into my aura to make it look like it moved. Regardless, my perception was the book moved. Wolf is a young man named Michael Pasakarnis. It was his nickname, Wolf. He came back through a reading with the most amazing, important message for all of humanity. I saw somebody ask the question, who's Wolf? If you haven't read the book, you will want to, because it's stunning and shows proof that we are souls and the soul often knows what's going to happen to it. So I mentioned that I went to Pittsburgh to teach my personal mediumship class a couple weeks ago. I arrived Friday night before the Saturday class, and it was well after closing time for the shops and cafes in the hotel lobby when I arrived, but I put my luggage in the room and decided to check out the hotel for the next morning. I wanted to find the fitness center so I could find it in the morning. I wanted to see what my breakfast options were. So I wandered down to the lobby and I saw a Starbucks counter behind a closed gate. And So I'm standing there looking through the gate to see anything there I might want rather than the full buffet in the dining room. And just then a woman named Kim, who is going to be on my radio show this Thursday to share this story live with everyone. Kim wanders by. I didn't know Kim, but I could tell by the way she was looking at me that she knew me. And she goes, Suzanne. And I said, you must be in my class tomorrow. And she said, yes. We got to talking. She's all excited. It was helping my energy build for the class. And I said, well, okay, see you tomorrow. Glad you're here. She wandered off. Turns out that she had forgot contact solution or something. And because she forgot it, she was wandering around to see if she could find it, but the gift shop was closed. So just notice how we were brought together because she just happened to forget something. I just happened to want to go downstairs, and there we are crossing paths. So she walked away, and I went back to looking through the closed gate of the Starbucks. Just as I look in there, there's a basket of oatmeal, instant oatmeal packets on the counter. And one of the packets slipped down in the basket on its own and went back up. And it made this squiggly noise like this. Just like that. And it was just like the book that moved. I kind of looked to the side like, did anybody see that but me? There's nobody around. And I looked back, I looked at that oatmeal basket and I said, who's here? And I said, Brenda, was that you? I don't feel Brenda. Boris, my main spirit guide, was that you? I don't feel either one of them. And then I feel this spirit with this giggly feeling just kind of going like, hee 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 hee, like this is fun. But I couldn't tell you, male, female, old, young. It was the strangest thing to be a medium, to have physical mediumship. This oatmeal package moves. I know it's a message and I can't tell who it is. Just this little feeling of anticipation. But in that moment, I knew it was somebody related to Kim, who I had just talked with. So class starts the next day. I was really wrapped up in teaching the group. I saw her at one point, but didn't have a chance to talk to her. And after the lunch break, there were a few people waiting in line to have their books signed, my books. Kim got up to me. I'm signing her book, and I'm thinking now about this oatmeal package. And she mentioned something about a daughter while I'm signing my book, and I looked at her and I said, you have a daughter in spirit? Because I'm not feeling anything. And she said, no, my mom. I'm here because I want to connect with my mom. Now, I'm still not feeling mom. And I don't like to ask questions, but you know what my next question is. Did your mother like oatmeal? And Kim went, now, this is not your normal reaction to oatmeal, right? So I get covered with goosebumps, and everybody in line can feel now the electric energy between the two of us, and people start looking at us because I start telling her, I know this is your mom. I know she gave me a sign last night. I'm not going to tell you what it is. You have to tell me, why did you react like that to oatmeal? Because I wouldn't. That's not your normal oatmeal reaction. And she said, my mother ate oatmeal every night, not every morning. I know you all thought I was going to say morning. Every night. Now that is unusual. And she said, for the past week, for some reason, I've been obsessed with oatmeal and I've eaten it every day for a week. Why are you asking? And I told her what happened with the oatmeal, and now everybody's looking at us, and we were just celebrating and clapping. And she said, Suzanne, I had a few really good signs from my mom on the way here, but I said to her just as I was arriving, Mom, I need a really big sign that you're around. And I said, well, your mom did it. And the class reconvened, and I shared this with the class. And her daughter raises her hand, Kim raises her hand, and she said, Suzanne, something you need to know about my mom. She always had to be the center of attention. She loved attention. And suddenly I hear Brenda going, ding, 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 and I knew why I couldn't sense Mom. I said, your mom loved the way this unfolded. She loved the dramatic way that it unfolded. She loves that I'm sharing it with the class in the moment, and the entire class is now celebrating your mom and the oatmeal that moved in front of you. It's just beautiful how spirit works. Just beautiful, and I hope that you love it too. Oh gosh, so I put it right away on my list of top events. I hope all of you document your awesome spiritual experiences. I promise you it will help you notice them more and more moving forward. For those of you who say, I never get signs, start with the small ones and they will build. Okay, by the way, I think this is a silly thing to share with you, but there's the oatmeal. Looking through the gate, looking right through the gate. I will never forget, that's the exact picture of it. This packet right here, and when I showed it to Kim, she said, oh my God, maple and brown sugar was my mom's favorite. And I didn't notice to this moment, everybody, that not all of them were maple and brown sugar. So way to go, Mom.